Доброго дня, пані та панове, шановні українські друзі. I'm afraid for those who do not speak English, you have to get your headphones, because yes, I'm a great friend of Ukraine, but unfortunately I didn't have the time yet to learn the language. Other I can read it, but not really decipher it, what it means. So thank you very much for this invitation and the interesting question that I should be ready to answer here. Message from the EU, why Ukraine is one of us and what should be done to implement this in membership. Now this week has been really a historic one, and 2 days ago when we were all in Brussels, and at 12 o'clock then came the message from the European Commission President that among the other 10 countries that were referred to, it was about Ukraine to recommend to open the accession negotiations. That was for all of us, and I'm pretty sure for all of you here, a very positive, a very lucky, and a very happy moment, because we thought that you deserve it. And this message has come in spite of this dreadful war of aggression, who in its full scale started on the 24th of February. And although we are here in a peaceful surrounding, we were affected by the countrywide alert that we all had on our apps on our phones. And I'm pretty sure, although we are here to reflect about the future, and in this particular region, many thoughts of all of you are with your families throughout the country, and certainly with your friends and loved ones who are on the front line. So this is always something that goes with all of us. Now, this, of course, does not yet, this fact that we invited the Council of the European Union, our heads of state and government, the Commission invited them and asked them and recommended to take a decision in December unanimously to approve this suggestion. We in the European Parliament have done that long before and opted for that. We have voted since, not only since the start of the full-scale war, in favor of Ukraine's candidate status, in favor of Ukraine's becoming a negotiating state. We have also, among other things, voted in favor that you should end up not only in the EU, but also in NATO. So my institution has really been with you and with your aspirations for a long time. All that does, of course, not yet answer the question why Ukraine is one of us. Now, one of the reasons, having listened to what Pavlo Kazarin just said and how he presented that all, he is one proof and one reason why to say that is why Ukraine is one of us, because you have people like Pavlo Kazarin who are expressing so excellently what Ukraine stands for, what your aspirations are, and what should be done and must be done for a secure future of the country. And of course, why Ukraine is one of us, you could also go into history, and especially in this very region where we are here in Zakarpattia, a region that fortunately suffered 24 years less of the Soviet Union, if I count 1917 to 1941. So, of course, before the start of the Second World War in this region. These less 24 years because you have, in this region, belonged for quite a while to other European countries, and the multinationality and multilinguality of this region is also proof of this very region's Europeanness. But that is only this part of Ukraine. But you can also go further back into history to the Magdeburger Law, Magdeburger Recht, which was spread to so many cities up to Chernihiv and Poltava, and so to say this way of organizing cities and organizing local self-government that has had a tradition here along since the medieval ages, that you might argue that is another reason. But I think history is not enough, but it is today the values, the principles, and the wishes and the aspirations of the citizens of Ukraine that make you one of us. You show fighting this war, fighting also our fight. And it's easy for us to say, to wish you well. No, we are supporting you, of course, in multifold ways, and we must do more, especially on the weapons. There is all agreement, not only in my parliament, but far beyond, and all the other things that we have done. I think we defend you because you defend our values, and that is the decisive point why you are one of us and why it is necessary to start this process now, to have you finally then in this European Union, in this union of democracy, of freedom, of rule of law, and of also in this very region, shall I say, local self-government, where it is more important perhaps than in other regions. But I think it's throughout Ukraine, it's important that the local level is strengthened in its decision-making, because that is where the citizens experience public authority. It's not that the normal citizen would regularly speak with the minister or the president, but the local citizen is in a situation where he goes to the city hall or to the city administration and gets his right and gets his wishes fulfilled, hopefully. So that is where democracy is very direct. And in this regard, Ukraine has achieved a lot when it comes to the decentralization, and it must be preserved. We have in our parliament also seen to it to strengthen this approach. Perhaps you may know it's not only now about the decision in the council to actually start the negotiations with the country, but it's also of the further financing. And I'm one of the two co-rapporteurs on the 50 billion Ukraine package, the Ukraine facility. So 50 billion, I can assure you I have nothing with me, so it's not about immediate expenditure. Now, this is something that also has to be agreed unanimously in December, because it enlarges the scope of our multi-annual financial framework, and this is still one of those things that are being decided unanimously on the government side. And so that is the second biggest and second most important decision that needs to be taken in December. But it is, as I said, definitely about what the Ukrainians are fighting for and what they stand for. And this is with all these atrocities and with all this what you have to go through, at the end, I'm sure, apart from not only our wish, but our resolve and our real intention that this country will win this war, that at the end there will be a better Ukraine coming out of the ashes. There will be a Ukraine that will be more modern, that will be more democratic, and where the citizens really know what they have got when they are building this democratic state, this democratic society. And there will be this notion also of belonging together, which can be, as I said, especially felt also in this region, which has a multinational history and a composition of a population which are looking also towards Ukraine, but also towards the immediate neighborhood. And this region does already serve and will in future serve as a real good transit and bridge province of Ukraine, which will then be the connecting part with the rest of the European Union, where we will see that a lot of roads and infrastructure and also transborder cooperation, which is partly already existing, will be further developed. And I think these are really good prospects, particularly for this region. But of course, we are also aware it's not all just rosy perspectives. We are also aware that there are still the old guys or the old forces, the old structures who may be a bit silenced now during the war. Some of the big oligarchs, they have also lost a lot of their property in the occupied areas, or they have been destroyed. And there are, of course, also amongst the different policymakers, and I'm not going into any detail, you know better whom I might perhaps mean, those who, well, either during the war or for the time thereafter, are planning ahead. And I think it is important that all real reformers in politics, all real and good civil society activists, all those who have fought for this country in this war will be very vigilant when it comes to the time thereafter, and when it comes to implementing what is necessary to then become a member of the European Union. And I can assure you, you will be supported from us, not only in the European Parliament, but amongst all those who really are aware that this situation in which we are all in here is currently a systemic conflict with an aggressor, with a war criminal that has an intention that goes far beyond Ukraine, because he tries to fight our way of living, our European way of life. And we will not accept that. Simply also because the rest of the world is watching how the democratic world comes out of this war. Will we be pushed further back in the light eyes of the world? Well, the West was pushed out of Afghanistan. We are currently getting out of the Sahel, and in some countries the Wagner group is replacing some French troops in the north of Mali, perhaps. So that is what the rest of the world sees, but that is a bit away from Europe. But if it were that we did not support you sufficiently so that you can win this war, the perception would be in the rest of the world that this West is backtracking. Although we are good partners as European Union, both good partners in trade and in development cooperation, all those in Latin America who would like to cooperate with us, or in Africa, or those in Asia who are afraid of China already today, who would like to have a long-term engagement with us, if they saw that we are backtracking in our own core continent, they would say, well, would be nice to get along with the West, but apparently they are on the decline. And so let's arrange with the Chinese, or in some regions with the Russians, perhaps then it doesn't get that bad as it went with Ukraine. So this is something that must not happen. This is something that we must avoid together. And that is why it is so important also now this week that we set a clear signal in a way that we say, no, the future of Ukraine is clear. The future of Ukraine is certainly not in a Russian orbit, and it is certainly also not in a gray zone, but the future of Ukraine is within the European Union. And in order to ensure that, as I said, it's the one thing what we have to do, and we have to prepare and have to adapt. But as I said, there's a lot of work to do also inside Ukraine. I alluded at some issues that had already been done, like the decentralization, or I could name the fight against corruption when it comes to the establishment of these anti-corruption bodies, which are working well, which need more capacity, of course. But as I said, I referred briefly to the old guys. They are already there. But I think, and that makes me a bit more optimistic, apart from the fact that some of those who have behaved wrongly in the past have lost a lot economically because of the war. I think this clear prospect, this clear perspective towards the European Union makes them also rethink their behavior. Because unfortunately, the difference between the other former communist countries in Central Europe, who are now inside the EU, for Ukraine, this EU perspective has actually become concrete only now, unfortunately, with this war. So what was the effect? I mean, when the wall came down in Central Europe, there were also those who were in charge before, the old communists. Some elegantly privatized themselves and also ended up further on the top and not so much on social assistance. So, but why was it that in this short phase of enriching and grabbing certain economic goods, at some point in very early, there was the clear perspective for all these countries that they would be members of the European Union. So the attitude of those, well, we didn't call them oligarchs at the time, perhaps because they were not that big in the smaller countries there in Central Europe, but all those profiters from the old system who profited in the change for themselves, they embraced then suddenly the rule of law, and be it to preserve what they had grabbed in the very wild times in the change. So, but that was then at the latest in 1993, when the famous Copenhagen criteria were created for the accession and the decision was done. They are all coming in. This decision did not apply to Ukraine. You know, we had different programs. We didn't call it at the time Eastern Partnership yet, but definitely we had the FARE program for the Central Europeans and the TARCIS program for the former Soviet Union, which you were then part of. So the prospects were different. Consequence, these oligarchs, or those guys who had then enriched themselves after the end of the Soviet Union, they thought they could simply continue the old way. And they did for quite a while. Now, I think that is the hope also that I would like to say that I see is that these people have understood the message. On the one hand, the dreadful message from the Russians, they simply destroy what they can destroy, including their property. So there is also probably no hidden agenda for some of those who thought they could get along with the Russians. I think that is over. But now they have the concrete prospect of becoming part of the legal sphere of the European Union. And there the rule of law applies. So I recommend to all to whom it may concern to then embrace the rule of law and at least then secure what they have got, but not try to go it the old way. I recall a reception, I think it was in Kiev at some time, when we had parliamentarians and other people from Ukraine and Georgia and Moldova. So these three who had booked in the Eastern Partnership the full board with the EU. And I had to greet them, and there were some of those suspects that I just referred to, and I told them, well, you know, I have a good news for you. In a functioning democracy, one can be rich and law-abiding. Rich and law-abiding. But there are two conditions. Either you have a good product to sell, then it's fine, or you have a good service to deliver, then it's fine. But what is not enough in a functioning democracy, that you have good relations to the minister or to the mayor or to whomever, that is not enough to become rich and bribe certain people and get the public procurement in this regard. Insofar, I think Ukraine has already done a lot when I think of Prozoro. Now that must for public procurement purposes only. And the other anti-corruption agencies I refer to, the e-declaration that has been reinstated, we have insisted on that. And I think that will go ahead. And insofar, I am quite optimistic with this frame and this clear perspective of EU membership. There will be all those who are really the real reformers, those activists in civil society, those who are engaging in the country. They will be on the winning side, and they will make Ukraine the state that you want it all to be, a functioning democracy. And I would like to assure you that we in the European Parliament and amongst all those decision makers in the European Union, we will stay with you, because we have engaged and invested so much in support, because we think not only that you deserve it, but as I said, that you are one of us. And if I recall my last stay with my colleagues in Mariupol on the 31st of January 2022, just 24 days before this awful war started, we at the time still had some hope, some little hope, although the signs were already very clear. And on this occasion, we have assembled 8 members of the European Parliament. We assembled at the Peace Bell in Mariupol, and that was our photo that we had taken on this 31st of January 2022, where we had this hope. And as this hope was unfortunately not, there's somebody taking a photo, as this hope was unfortunately not fulfilled, our resolve, our wish, our desire for you to win and for you to overcome this tragedy and this horror and be part of us, belonging to us, that will prevail. And we will do everything za peremogу. Slava Ukraini.